and welcome to the Greeners Podcast, an unfiltered discussion related to health and healthcare. My name is Amie,
And my name is Sara.
and we are your podcast hosts. So, Sara, do you want to take it away, starting with the weekend introductions, or do
Sure,
you want to
sure.
kind of,
Let's do our little intro or recap of the weekend. My weekend, as usual, was pretty routine. I don't have too much to say about it, except I feel that this is one of the last days of summer, so I'm hanging on to every last thread that I can. And
yeah,
I even dug my shorts back out today, and I'm still wearing flip flops. I haven't really
me
got my socks
too.
out yet. I will, but not yet. And I guess an ongoing theme for me this week, and you saw me post on Facebook, is like I'm kind of taking a deep dive into our monthly expenses, and I'm kind of stuck on how much we
Oh
spend
no.
on food every month. And it actually blows my mind because,
Yeah.
like, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but me and my husband, we actually have separate credit cards and we have separate bank accounts, even though we
Okay.
share all of the expenses, which I know is not really normal, but this is how we operate. So, like looking at my half of the bills, I was like, oh yeah, we probably spend like 600 to 900 bucks a month on food. And then my husband's like, no, he's like, we spend 1,500. And I'm like, what? So then I decided to poll all my friends and I got varying responses, including your response. But I was actually really blown away by the number of people that responded that said they cook all of their own meals and they hardly ever go out to eat. And that might be my downfall, is that I do like to, I do like to go out to eat. Even though I work from home now, I still do that. And when you and I worked together, we went to the cafeteria almost every day to eat lunch, and we always bought our food. So
Yeah, it was a bad habit.
yeah, I know. And we're trying to break out of it now, but I still feel like I still don't feel like we spend that much every month. I think there's some sort of miscalculations, and I'm going to get to the bottom of this. But
You're so
I,
funny.
I've been trying to justify it to say, like, okay, we have two kids and, they waste a lot of food. Food prices have gone up. Um, we go to Costco and I know that, there's always these little goodies that you buy. And I'm like, well, when I look at my Costco bill, it's not all food. There's a lot of gadgets and clothes in there. So that's not really the real cost. So I've been kind of fixated on this all weekend. And I think it's just like, I need to figure this out and I need to sort this out.
Yeah, it's so funny that you said that. So Jordan and I did that kind of deep dive into our finances probably about a year and a half ago. But one of the things that I kind of figured out was, yeah, our food bill was high. But the thing is, like, even with us cooking at home, our food bill still is high because so we buy a lot of fresh fruits. So like my son Tristan just loves fruit. So trying to keep up with having strawberries and kiwis and these various different things in our household, it's
Hmm.
expensive because like let's say one pack of strawberries is $6.99 from Costco, and they're off season, they're even more. And
Right.
he can go through a package of strawberries in like a day and a half. So, and I don't want to deprive them of that stuff, right? And then our meat costs are pretty high too. So because Jordan has a pretty high protein diet, I'd say that we spend probably a good chunk of that money, at least I'd say probably $100 almost weekly on just meat. So
Well, at least you're
and then
eating well. It's not like you're spending money and getting like McDonald's every day.
well, I'll be honest. I'd say that we get like, for example, we do like a Starbucks run once a week. So, but the thing is, that's pretty expensive too. Like, we got three Fox cookies. I got a pumpkin spice latte. Oh my god, you have to have one. And Jordan got like a refresher, and that was like $23. So
Well,
I was like,
Starbucks is
I looked at Jordan. I was
expensive.
like,
Yeah.
damn, huh?
And I've been kind of like justifying to myself, so we didn't even factor alcohol into this because I'm trying to tell myself that's like an entertainment expense. That's not actually like food. So
Right.
that's not even included. And I would
Right,
not
Sarah.
include that.
Okay. Yeah, like, I mean, I think when it comes to food, like, if you were eating out all the time, that's one thing, but I think how I rationalize it, like, I've stopped kind of counting because I know it's not gonna do me any good, and I know one time when I was going through and I hit, like, around 1,800, I was starting to feel panicked. I'm like, "Okay, this is really not worth it," when I know, like, we are eating these things, and I don't know, like,
Yeah, I guess
I don't
because I'm
know.
really
Try
frugal
not to
in my
stress.
everyday life, like I kind of want to know what the real cost is. And even my
Right,
parents, right? So my parents are retired. They cook every single meal. They shop at discount grocery stores and they even told me they were spending $900. So then I
right.
didn't feel so bad after that. But I
No,
still
I don't
think
think you
that
should feel
there's
bad.
I still feel like there's things I could do, I guess. And I don't want to cook every single meal from scratch, but I feel like there's things that we could do to, save here and there.
It's not gonna be on the food section, I tell you that. When we had our, like, financial situation kind of, like, breaking it down, it wasn't our food costs that we decreased, it was our entertainment.
Oh, okay. Hmm.
Mhm.
Okay, okay. I know what you mean, like entertainment. Okay. Um, so why don't you tell me about your weekend? How has it been for you?
Well, really, it's just been kind of status quo, right? Like you said, the weather's starting to change here. It kind of went from, like, summer straight to fall. Like, there was no, like, in between. It was like 28, 28, 28. Then it was all of a sudden like 19.
And then it was like,
So
"Hey, today we're back for one day, and then we're going away again."
yeah, I was like, I went outside and I was like, I need a sweater. It's cold. So we're just doing kind of the, closing up the pool, which was kind of bittersweet for my kids. They were kind of like, oh, like, now summer's really done. We're like, yep. So we're
Mhm. Mhm.
slowly closing the pool because I guess, like, there's a lot of water in it and whatever. So we're doing that. We're just kind of cleaning up around the yard. I actually have a plant that I'm supposed to try to dig up because it died, and then, like, the plant store was like, "Bring it back," and I'm like, it's been in the ground for like 4 weeks." So I'm gonna try to do that, chip away at it slowly because Jordan can't help me dig, and then, like, my right thumb is virtually useless. So,
Now you
but
have to
anyways,
rely on
but
your kids. If you can get them to dig, that would be amazing.
yeah, right. Oh god, no. Like, they will just make a big bloody mess. So they're not coming anywhere near any dirt, nothing. But
Mm.
yeah, just kind of status quo, getting everything ready for the fall. My son, he's like, as soon as he sees leaves changing, he's just like, it's Halloween. And of course, like, all the stores have, like, Halloween stuff in it now. So he
Mhm.
pulled out our we have, like, some, like, lawn inflatables. So he pulled out this, like, scary cat inflatable, and it's hanging out in his room right now. So I don't know.
Oh god. Okay.
Halloween will start early, I guess, at our household.
Okay, so just to get back onto this week's topic, we wanted to talk about being gritty in your everyday life and how you can kind of overcome hurdles and things that you are going to come across. And I guess just to start before that, maybe we can talk about why we chose the Gritty Nurse as our podcast name because Amie, you were actually the one who chose this name.
Right.
So, do you wanna is there a story behind it? Because to be honest, you suggested the name and I kind of just agreed with it because I couldn't think of anything better.
Oh gosh. So why did I decide to call us the Gritty Nurse Podcast? Well, I think we kind of discussed, prior to this, we were kind of sick and tired of all of the patriarchal, um I guess, not even, I guess it would be, I don't want to say, so I guess it's like the patriarchal, matriarchal, like, telling us how to do things, kind of just how we've experienced, or at least how I've experienced nursing in the past over 10 years, just feeling that, like, enough is enough. And I think I just needed a real approach because I felt that people would really be able to be in tune with us and in touch with us if we're telling it how it is. Because I think there's a lot of information out there where, there's a lot of pressure put on nurses, and not just nurses but women in general. And I felt that it was just important for us to be truth tellers and truth seekers, really, and just be who we are in our everyday life. I think that is kind of the most important part, right? Like, I think people hear about the fluff and the bullshit all the time. But I think with us being the Gritty Nurse Podcast, the expectation is that we are going to have a no BS approach, and we're going to just tell it how it is. And, Some people might agree with us, some people might not, but but I think what's the most important part is we're remaining true to ourselves. And
Right, right. And I think
that's
that it's
why we're
important
called
for
gritty.
us,
Yeah.
like, not to sugarcoat things, because you can see on the surface, right, what's on paper, and you don't hear about the story that goes on behind everything else, right? So we kind of just
Right,
wanted
right.
to talk about what the real story is versus like what's on paper. So yes, we have full-time jobs. We've both gotten our master's degrees. We're working in nursing leadership, but what went on before that? It wasn't just smooth sailing the whole time, obviously, but we don't often talk about that. We don't talk about our failures, but we often talk about our successes.
Right,
So
right, right.
in preparation for this podcast, I made something called my resume of failures. And I read this article, it was about 5 years ago, about it was a professor who also did the same thing. It was like, this is a list of everything that I've ever failed at. And I want people to know that, it's okay to not do well. It's okay to not pass something, but you just have to keep
Right.
going. And so that's kind of what I did for today because
Okay, cool.
yeah, so I thought like I'm trying to think of, things that didn't go well in my life, and what I did to overcome them and,
Mhm,
that kind of
mhm.
thing. So, all right. So why don't I start with my first failure? This is not really related to nursing, but it took me 3 tries to pass my driver's test. And Amy, before you say anything, okay,
I'm
I
not
know
saying anything.
I'm an Asian driver. I know, but
Oh, I was not going to go there.
I'm going to go there because I get it. Like, okay, I think I was just a nervous driver, and the first time I failed, I probably shouldn't have passed because I went to go make a lane change and I didn't really look in my blind spot, and the driver had, or the whatever instructor teacher person had to like take the wheel and like turn it back. So I get that.
Oh, no.
I was a nervous driver. And then the second time, I actually think I did a lot better, but I was they took me on a different route past a school zone, and automatically you're not supposed to drive more than 40 kilometers an hour in a school zone. I don't know what that is in miles, but anyway, I
Right.
went 50 kilometers because that's usually what you can do on a regular road, and they failed me for that. So
Wow,
then
yeah.
comes a third time, and I actually passed, and I was so happy that I wrote a thank you card to the guy who passed me. And I don't even remember his name now. Must have been Brian or something, but I was like so happy. I was like, thank God. And I mean, it was really embarrassing because I could see that when you signed in for the driver's test, there's a little number beside your name. Did you know that?
Right.
There's a little
No, I
number
didn't.
that indicates your attempt number. So I'm like seeing all these ones and twos, and then I'm a
Are
three,
you
and
serious?
I'm like, oh
Wow, I didn't know
God,
that.
if I don't pass, I'm gonna be a four. I don't want to be a four.
Oh, no.
So like,
So
I
how
guess. Sorry,
No,
go
keep
ahead.
going, sorry. No, I
No,
was gonna say, like, how did that make you feel? Like, like, that's kinda what I was gonna get at, but
I guess for me, it was like embarrassing, but at the same time, failure or like not getting my driver's license was not an option. I was like, I am going to
right.
keep going. If it's 10 times, I'll keep going until I get it because being a teenager when you live in the suburbs, it's like you have no freedom to do anything if you can't drive.
Right, that's
And
absolutely true, yeah.
and then my parents, or at least my mom's theory was like, "Oh, you need to wait until you're older and more responsible." And I'm like, "No, I just need to practice. I don't think it matters if I'm 16 or like 26 or 30. Like I just need to practice. I don't think it's an age thing necessarily." And I wasn't one of those crazy drivers that would speed or anything. So I just knew, I needed to get my driver's license.
Right, no, I hear that. And, I mean, I think the most important part of that is, like, you kept trying, right? Like, I mean, some people would be really disheartened after the second or the first attempt, and they'd be like, "Hey, maybe this isn't for me, or, it's not gonna work out," and you kinda kept going back, so that's kind of the most important part.
Mhm.
But, I guess if I think about myself in terms of, some of the times where I might have experienced failure, so maybe a little thing that you didn't know about me, or maybe you did. So, I had written my MCAT, oh my god, in my 3rd year of nursing. So this is funny. I remember thinking I was, like, a badass and I was super smart, right? And, it's kind of funny. So I had like I was in my 3rd year and I was doing really well in nursing school, and I was like, "You know what? I should be able to do this. I could be a doctor. I'm so smart." And we definitely know now it's way more than just intelligence for some schools. I mean, I guess it still is about having ridiculously high grades and not looking at emotional intelligence,
Right.
but I was kind of thinking at that point in time, like, why not? The sky's the limit, blah 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 blah. So I had been doing some light studying, I guess. And I was like, oh, I got an 80 in my chemistry before. I got like an A in physics. And I should be fine, right? So I didn't study as hard as I probably should have. And then I also was like, oh, I just did anatomy and physiology in year one. So like, I don't really need to do this. Like
So you
it
didn't
should
take a
be kind of
prep
like a
course or
cakewalk.
anything? Because a lot of people
No,
do
I
that.
didn't. I did
Oh.
not. So, but like I bought the MCAT book, the golden standard or whatever, and but I thought that was going to be enough, right? I remember sitting down. So this was before the MCAT was electronic, so it was all paper, and it was like an 8-hour day.
Mhm.
So 8 hours really actually turned into being like a 12-hour day
What?
because they give you breaks in between. So like they let you write your first section, they give you like a break. You write your second section, then they give you lunch break, and then you go to write the other 4 sections of the MCAT. No word of a lie. I remember Jordan dropping me off. Like I was writing it at the Holiday Inn somewhere in Etobicoke, and I remember him dropping me off and picking me up later that evening. And it must have been like he dropped me off at like 8 o'clock in the morning, and he picked me up around 6 or 8, somewhere around there. It was
Oh my
late.
god.
I got in the car and I just burst into tears. I was not ready for that. And the thing is, I could tell you, I was not the only person who was crying after that, but like just broke down, burst into tears. And Jordan's like, "What is going on?" I'm like, "I don't want to talk about it. I am so exhausted. That was a shit show." Cause like you have to study. And I think doing the prep course probably would have been very helpful. And I'm pretty sure I like slept for like 48 hours straight because I was like exhausted. I think I got up to like eat and then went back to sleep. And I think for me that was like a huge eye-opening moment because you think that I guess at that point in time in my life too, I kind of was like, I could do this. I'm really smart. I don't need to really study very hard. And the MCAT like blew me away. And not only and it blew away like my self-confidence because when I got my scores, they were like I think I was like just at the cutoff. So I think at that time I can't even remember. I think you had to have like a score of I can't remember. But I was at like the bare minimum cutoff to actually even apply to med school.
Right,
And
right.
that was like shattering because I was like, "Oh my god, all these great grades I'm getting in nursing." And I wrote the MCAT for the first time and it crushed me. And I remember applying to med schools. I was like, I'll just apply anyways, and I got rejected for every single one.
Oh, no, that's like a second blow, right?
yeah, it's just like, oh my god, like now I didn't do well here, and now nobody wants me. So it was for me, it was like an eye opening moment. I was just kind of like, well, I can't go about life not thinking that I can't work hard. Like you have to work hard to be able to get anywhere in life, right? It's not it for me, like the natural sciences and these things didn't necessarily come naturally. Like I had to work hard, but for whatever reason during that period of time I was just thinking that I didn't. And it was hard. It was like a hard pill to swallow to get all of those rejecting emails from the schools, or like all the, I guess it's like they send you like a letter and they're just like, "Oh no, there's 5,000 applicants,"
Oh, yeah, they
and
just
essentially the answer is
it's just
no.
something nice, like, that they say to everyone, but, when you get that
Yeah,
little
but it's
envelope.
just like, "No, your
Yeah.
MCAT was garbage, and we're not going to even give you an interview." So, I remember that was really a really hard pill to swallow. But,
And how do you feel about that now?
well, I actually wrote my MCAT 2 years ago, and I did much, 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 much better.
Oh, I didn't know that. I knew you 2 years
Saying
ago.
that, yeah, no, I wrote it, I wrote it, yeah, I wrote it when I was, so it would have been 2 years ago. I was gonna tell you, we were working at the same place, actually.
Okay.
Just before you started, I had written it.
Oh,
So I
okay.
actually had done really well, but I just needed to do it for myself. Like, I know that sounds really crazy because it's actually a very expensive test, and I just needed to know that I could do this. Like, if
Yeah.
it really came down to, yes, I wanted to be a medical doctor, and I could tell you I don't, because I've had various conversations with a number of different people, and I think my life has changed in a way where I'm happy with where I am, and I don't feel that I don't need those credentials to prove who I am as a person. Like, I'm happy where I am.
Yeah, that's good. It's
And
really about your validation and knowing you could have done it. It just
right.
reminds me of
Well, but
yeah.
I think it's also about maturity, right? Like, I just felt that I was more mature, I was more well-rounded, and I took the time to actually study. And I did way better, but now it's just I needed to do it for myself to know that, like,
Yeah.
I don't know, it was a really painful moment to be like, "Oh, I
But
thought
I
I was smart enough, but I wasn't," right?
right, and
So
it was just like at least you learn from it, right? So you're like, "Okay, I just can't walk with my head in the clouds thinking I got this even though I didn't even study half as hard as I should have and
mhm.
thinking I'm going to get accepted into med school because I did well in nursing school." It's like, no, it doesn't always work that way.
Yeah, it doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily translate, right? And
Mhm.
I think for me, I needed that time to mature and to grow. And I feel like that is like, I've learned so much from just even that one experience that I feel that I can translate that into a variety of different things. Like, I feel like I had a very I'm trying to think of the personality. Um, so I think I had a very, very fiery personality. I think that's a nice way to put it.
Wait,
When
you're
I
not
was
fiery now? I still think you're fiery.
I'm a little less, you know what? It's kinda crazy. I'm less fiery than I used to be, because I've my children have calmed me down
Really?
considerably, yes. Where I think I've now had to, like, I've been able to kind of, I guess, what's that word? I guess it's like choose my battles, choose the hill that I wanna die on. And I realize that, like, not everything has to be a fight. There are some things that are worth fighting for, and, I think knowing what those things are helps you know who you are as a person, and then like, you choose the hills that you're gonna die on. And
Mhm.
I I think slowly over time I've been figuring that out. So I'm pretty excited that I could tell that there's changes that are happening, and some things are great, some things aren't, but I think it's a part of the journey, right?
Yeah, I think you kind of described my mentality exactly when I finished nursing school. So I took the unusual step of right after finishing undergrad, I went straight to do my master's of nursing. And my rationale at the time was, I'm young. I want to just, while I'm in the school zone, I want to just keep going to school because I think
Mhm.
that if I stop going to school and start working, I'll never go back. So my mentality was, I'm just going to go straight through. And so I ended up working casually while going to school full time. And, my head was really big when I graduated. I was 20, I had only just turned 24 and I had my
Right.
master's. And some crazy idea I had is like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna, apply to jobs and I'll become a manager or I'll become a clinical nurse specialist or some kind of advanced practice nurse. And I remember like all my classmates were older than me. So I really felt kind of inadequate the whole time I was in nursing school because I was with people that were in their 40s. And I think some of them maybe were even in their 50s going to get their masters. And one of them said to me, "So you think you're going to be a manager?" And I was like, "Yeah, I am." So it was a huge reality check for me to finish and start applying for jobs because it was like time again and again and again. It was like, you have the educational requirements, but we're looking for someone with experience. And I'm like, well, how do I get
Right.
experience when nobody will give me a chance? So I ended up working at the bedside in many different roles, but just trying to build up that experience. And it took a long time. So, like, it took me, I think, 6 years after I graduated almost before I was able to get my first advanced practice role. And
Right.
I think throughout that time it was really humbling because I just I don't know, like I guess I guess maybe it was partly me, but also in the program, they just sort of build you up to have this expectation that as soon as you graduate, you're going to get that job. Or in the case of a lot of my classmates, they already had the job they wanted, but it was more like I'm going back to school to prove that I have the educational background for the job I already have right now.
Right. And I think that's, I'm glad that you brought that up because I think that's actually a reality that we need to let a lot of nurses know, right? Because I think a lot of people who are ambitious and don't take this the wrong way, because like I think having that ambition and that fire is really really important. Um, that if you take the route where you go from your bachelor's degree to your master's degree to whatever, that people feel like you don't have the street cred, right? You don't have the experience to back up all that book knowledge or whatever the case may be. And it's kind of like we all have to bear our stripes, right? You have to kind of like, do the bedside thing first for a little bit and then kind of have the opportunity to be able to be in that leadership position, because I think you have to, like, I mean, that the experience comes with like you have the knowledge. It's great that you have that foundation, but getting that experience is important. And I think I don't think it has to be a wealth of experience. Like, I mean, you see these jobs where it's like, oh, 5 years of managerial experience or whatever, or 5 years leadership. And it's like, well, if if I have these credentials or I have this bedside experience, how do I get this 5 years managerial experience? To be honest, this is definitely another podcast episode, but I feel like some of these job postings are unrealistic.
Right. And we know that
And
what they're looking for is the perfect candidate. So they're going to list
right.
everything they want you to have. But there's very few people that would meet all of those qualifications. And actually, I read an article that said if you met every single qualification they were looking for, then they'd be wondering, why are you applying for this job? Like what
Right.
happened
It's like
in your previous job? So it's like you can't win. But I feel like, I guess just going back to street cred, it's like once I got my first advanced practice role and I was trying to make changes on the unit, I feel like you do have to have those years of experience to show nurses that you know what you're talking about. So it's not
right.
even so much about being able to make the change or having the knowledge, but they just would respect you if you've worked in their shoes for like a number of years at least. That's what I felt it was really about.
Yeah, it's kind of like you got to be able to back it up, right? You can't just be all talk and you don't know, you haven't experienced those struggles, or I think it's hard to be like, for example, when I kind of was coming into professional practice in obstetrics, you're working with some people that may have been working in obstetrics for the last 30 years, right? It's really hard as someone who's a new grad, just finished their master's degree, 5+ years of nursing experience, to be telling someone who has 30 years of experience what to do. But I think the other thing, and this is just kind of diverging, but leadership is a whole different perspective, right? Like, and I think every day I'm learning what leadership actually means, because I definitely have seen what leadership doesn't look like, but still kind of learning what that is. And I think also being a gritty nurse and learning to be gritty in your everyday is to take those opportunities where you feel uncomfortable and to do something that you wouldn't otherwise do, or to even get into a role where you you're not very comfortable with. Like, I think the role that I'm in currently right now, I was kind of like, well, I want to learn about this stuff, but like I don't know, I don't know it all, but I'm willing to learn, and to have that willingness to try something new, I think definitely also helps you be more of a gritty nurse.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's just, I guess it's good to think about options, right? But then if you really want to make change, it's just you need to act on it. So
Right.
even though there's no guarantee that things are going to work out, you need to at least try. And I think that's something that I would suggest to people. You just have to try, go in with a positive attitude, go in with some sort of plan, but if you're not going to try, then it'll never happen. You can't wait for someone to like take you by the hand and lead you along. I guess there's certain cases where that might happen if you have connections, but usually that's not the case.
And then, like, I don't know if you have any other stories that you kind of want to get into, but one that I was thinking about, and this is the one thing that stands out to me in terms of how to be gritty in your everyday life, is I think it's so important for you. to be you, right? Like, I mean, when I think about myself, and maybe this is crazy, but I feel like I am the same person in front of you, in front of my mom, in front of my boss, right? Like, I don't feel that I need to put on a different face for each person that I'm with. Like, I feel like if you like me or you accept me or you understand me, you're going to understand that this is the type of person I am. I'm
Mhm.
not disrespectful or rude or whatever those things might be, but I have no problem having a discourse about someone and disagreeing with someone respectfully. And I think this is just something that I think over time I've kind of learned about myself, because I remember even thinking to myself, I'm very I could be very angsty. I could be very argumentative. I could be very I'm trying to think of the word. I don't want to say aggressive, but I guess let's throw it out there. Aggressive. And I was just like, how can I better channel this, right? Like, I don't have to come off in a particular way, but I just need to be me, right? Like, I just need to be who I am with you, with whomever it is. And I feel like having that understanding of yourself and being true to yourself is so important, right? I mean,
Mhm.
I can't think how else I'd rather really be. Like, I'm not saying that I can't have a conversation with someone or a disagreement and not see their point. I think that's also a part of it, right? Like, you should be able to be flexible enough to say, "Hey, that person has a good point," or, "No, I today I'm taking a stance on this because I believe that this is important to me," or
Yeah.
whatever the case may be. But I think it's for me, I just feel that it's important to be who you are no matter what the circumstances are. Like, if I think about a story, I think with my previous if I think back to like some of the previous leadership experiences I had with senior leaders or people that were in positions higher than my own, I felt that I always needed to please people. So I understand I think there's a difference between wanting to please people and then doing a good job, right? Just or doing the work that's required. And I think what I learned from my last position was I was always seeking the approval of this one particular person. And it wasn't even just the approval of the work that was being done. It was just generally like I just felt that I wanted to, put in my 110% every day of my life or my working life while I was with this organization. And I
Mhm.
realized very quickly that not everybody feels the same way. So I
Yeah.
thought to
Yeah.
myself that, like it was a very dangerous and very vulnerable place to be in, where you're feeling that the most important part of your job is to make sure that you're making someone else happy. And I found out that the most important part of my job is to make sure that people are safe, that I'm doing the honest and right thing, and that I'm happy.
Yeah, and I think
And
there's a difference between, like you said, doing the right thing and doing the right thing for a certain person, because it's good if they are the same thing, right? But when they're different, it's really conflicting, and it's like if you're doing the thing to please the other person at the expense of doing what's right, then is that really the right thing? And is that somewhere you
right,
want to be? Like I feel the same way, and I think that also knowing being gritty is being persistent, pushing through the hard times, but it's also knowing when to cut your losses, because let's face
absolutely.
it, we can't all be good at everything. And if I
Mhm.
can think of an example, back to when I was a staff nurse, I was working in a clinic. It was a gynecology clinic, and somehow I got pushed into writing an exam to be certified in menopause. Don't ask me why. Um, and it was like it became this big thing, right? Because I was working in a really small unit. There was only 4 nurses. I was the youngest, and I was, I guess, the most driven, the most motivated. So they're like, "Sarah, you go write this menopause exam." And it was in Chicago. So one thing led to another, and it was like I was super excited though, because I had this all expenses paid trip to go to Chicago, fly on a plane, stay over in a hotel, attend this menopause conference, and at the end of the conference I had to write this exam. But like it was such a small community that there was no study groups. Like they're just basically like read this textbook and then go write the exam. And
Okay.
so I go and I'm like, I have fun, I write the exam. I didn't really know how I was going to do because I just felt like there was no support other than reading this textbook. And then I went on vacation after that, come back, and I get this letter. It's like, you scored 61%. The cutoff this year is 65%. And I was like, oh my God.
Oh no.
So not only did I fail the exam, but I was worried that they weren't going to cover the cost of this trip because I didn't know if that was dependent on me passing the exam or not. And
Right.
the doctor that was in the clinic and my manager at the time kept asking me about my exam, and I kind of just put them off for a while, and I was, just avoiding them or being really vague. And then I'm like, okay, I have to tell them now. So I waited until I got my reimbursement for everything, and then I'm like, okay, I need to tell them now because this is just getting ridiculous. So I went in to tell them. Well, I went to tell my manager first, and she was really understanding. She's like, "Okay, don't worry. I'm sure you did your best." But I think for me, it was just knowing that it was I was way in over my head, and also I feel like I wasn't really interested in that subject area, and I
Right.
felt like I wrote it because I wanted to make people happy. Like, "Oh, I'm gonna write it. No one else is gonna write it. If I get this certification, it'll be awesome." And I think for me, it was just knowing that I needed to cut my losses. I wasn't planning to write it again. I didn't really want to work in that area. I mean, just in menopause. I still enjoyed the other parts of it, but it was just like, yeah, I don't want to do this. And I just needed to admit that to myself.
Yeah, and I wholeheartedly agree with you with being gritty is not just about pushing through and being strong. It's about cutting your losses and knowing when to accept, um, things that you might not be able to change or even to accept failures. Like I think failure is a horrible word. I don't think it's a scary word, but I think whenever you have something that you do that you don't do well in it, I think it's important to make an effort to try to try to do well, or try to not see it as, this is the worst part of who I am as a person, but to say, hey, I didn't do well at that. What can I do differently? Or how can I learn from this particular situation? Like I think it's important to accept your wins just as well as just as graciously as your losses. So um,
Right. And other things on my resume of failures is getting rejected twice by the university that was in my hometown. So, not just for undergrad, but also for grad school. And then I applied to a job um, in my hometown, never got a call back either. So, some things are just not meant to be. I don't think I'm meant to move back to my hometown just yet. Um, in nursing school, I almost failed microbiology. It was not my strength. I think it was super hard. And even in anatomy and physiology, I remember doing like my first exam and crying because I'm like, there's way too many nerves and muscles in the body, and I can't remember all this. Like, how am I gonna pass if I can't even get through my midterm? So there's, those kind of things. And going back to cut your losses, I know that I will never, ever, ever be any good at video games,
never say never.
ball sports, hand-eye coordination is just not happening for me. Um, I'm really directionally challenged, so even my kids know that I always have Google Maps on when I'm driving. And I don't enjoy cooking. I'm just gonna admit that. I don't enjoy cooking. I cook out of necessity, but it's not like I wake up thinking like, "Oh, I'm so excited to try this new recipe." That's just not me. And I've learned to accept that and just have like my go-to recipes. So my rule for cooking is like has to be 10 ingredients or less, has to take under an hour, and I'm not doing like crazy things to just make this. If there's like something that's like, oh, it's, if you cook it 5 minutes too long it's ruined, then I
You
can't do
can't
that.
handle
I'm not doing that.
it. Oh, that's so
Yeah.
funny.
And also, like, I've had like, I tried to start a business when I this was like 10 years ago as a birth educator and kind of like a postpartum doula, and I think that I was really not confident in myself, and I didn't know how to market myself, and I didn't know how to network. And so it kind of ended before it started. Like, I had a few clients, but it definitely wasn't like anything to brag about. So,
Well, I
yeah,
think
there's
the
that
fact
too.
that you even started something that you found challenging is kind of a big step, right? Like, I mean, most people be like, it's a theoretical idea and then that's it. But the fact that you even tried, I think that still is a really good thing to kind of look at. So that's just my opinion.
So, I mean, like the whole definition of gritty is just to be, I think, persistent. And what is the definition? I even had it pulled up. It's like the Merriam-Webster's definition of being gritty. I think it was like, I can't remember now, but have you seen that movie True
Yes, I
Grit?
have.
Because it's kind of like, okay. I just remember, well, I won't tell the ending just in case anyone wants to watch it, but I thought, okay, well, there's an example of being gritty as well.
Absolutely.
So,
I think everybody has the ability to be a gritty nurse. Like, I just think everybody has it in them. They might not know it's there, but I think I've been seeing it more in terms of seeing nurses standing up for themselves, being more outspoken about some of the more political things that are occurring within nursing as a profession. I think it's a good thing. Like, I think for too long, um, nurses specifically have been complacent in terms of whether it's our wages, whether it's our scope of practice, whether it's our how we hold ourselves accountable as a profession. Um, how we're viewed by the public as a profession. I think it's gone on way too long where people have created an image of what we're supposed to be, and I definitely don't think it's that. So I'm glad that more nurses are speaking up and speaking out on their experiences and how nursing has a as a profession or as a whole has changed entirely. So I mean, I think that is more gritty than I've seen in all my time of being a nurse, so it's pretty exciting. Um, I think there's a lot of challenges up ahead in terms of what's happening with nursing right now. Not very many people are very proud to call themselves nurses, which is a shame, but I hope that, with these nurses being gritty, that we might see some change coming.
absolutely. And I think even being in the podcasting world, I'm noticing more and more nurses doing
Yeah,
podcasts and being really visible on Instagram and, starting their own businesses. I'm really glad to see that. So we just have to keep going. And I think the more role models new nurses see, it'll just encourage them to do the same.
absolutely.
So, you've been listening to the Gritty Nurse podcast. If you like what you hear, please subscribe. We're on Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify, YouTube, and iHeartRadio. You can also follow us along on Facebook, Instagram, and
Thank you
Twitter.
for listening.
Thanks.